This is a big deal. Most of us know about our Cypress Creek EMS, and we think about them being ambulance people. And they are, and they're the best. And they've won national awards you're going to hear about. Today, you're going to hear about not only the base operations, the number of calls, the national recognitions of Cypress Creek EMS. You're going to hear about the other things they do. In fact, when this meeting, when the presentation part is done, we're going to go downstairs and see some of the equipment. You're going to learn about four-wheelers that are small ambulances. You're going to learn about bicycles that are what the EMTs take to the scene. Think MASH, and think about when you're in battle, when our police are in battle, that these are the people that back them up and save them. It's a very, very big deal. They even have, this was amazing, they even have a robot down there that can deliver medication or bandages or tourniquets to people on the battlefield without hurting somebody. So it's remarkable. Our speaker today is Wren Nealy, who's not only all the stuff I'm going to read, but he also helped chair this group a while back, and we appreciate that. All of our first responders, all of these law enforcement people are so active in our community, and they're a big deal. Please give them a hand, just because why not? Wren Nealy Jr. is a certified paramedic and licensed police officer in the state of Texas. So that doesn't sound like your original thought about what an EMS person is. He is the Director of Special Operations for Cypress Creek EMS and serves the Waller County Sheriff's Office as a Lieutenant SWAT Assistant Commander. In 2005, Wren was commissioned as a Special Agent of the Louisiana State Police. He has 22 years experience as a 911 paramedic and 17 years experience in law enforcement. He has 12 years of experience in SWAT operations and has worked in field supervision and administrative positions in both disciplines. Wren was appointed to the International Police Mountain Bike Association Board of Directors in 2012. He's an instructor certified by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, International Police Mountain Bike Association. That's why he's in that kind of shape. Taser International, Safariland Inc. Wren is the commander of the Cypress Creek Tactical Medic Team and the Bike Medic Response Team of Cypress Creek EMS. CCEMS provides tactical, operational, medical support to various local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. He serves as the program director for the CCEMS Tactical Operation and Medical Support Training Program, training tactical medics across the country. He has developed several specialized training programs for public safety and serves on the editorial board for Texas EMS Magazine. He's an accomplished author and public speaker on EMS special operations, as you will find out, and emergency preparedness, presenting at state and national conferences. He is the former co-chair of the Public Safety Committee for the Houston Northwest Chamber of Commerce. Please welcome Wren Nealy.
Good morning.
So that kind of set the stage that this is not going to be a talk about just ambulances and making 911 ambulance calls.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a little bit more information about what we do that typically is kind of behind the scenes. You know, it's not as publicized as our regular 911 ambulance service. Larry did a good job of introducing me, so I kind of skipped over the slide that had all that information on it. What I wanted to do is remind you and discuss some of our clinical first and clinical best practices at Cypress Creek EMS. What makes Cypress Creek EMS better than the next ambulance down the street? Some of these things highlight some of our clinical best practices. We were the first to clinically try the Lucas mechanical CPR compression device. Who has an idea what that is? Has anybody seen this device?
No.
We should have one downstairs for you to take a look at. It is very unique. It is battery operated, and it takes the place of manual CPR compressions. The days of a medic having to perform CPR compressions are gone. It's been replaced by technology. Why? Because the device does it a lot better than we can, and it doesn't tire. We've had several successes with that device. Here within the last probably 6 to 8 months, we've had 2 cardiac arrest, resuscitation, and saves. Now, when Cypress Creek talks about a save, we mean you leave the hospital on your own abilities with cognitive function. Doesn't do you any good if you get discharged from the hospital and have to go into a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility. These folks were in cardiac arrest for 30 minutes in one case and an hour in the next. They both walked out of the hospital. It's amazing. That device and our protocols combined led to that resuscitation. Very aggressive. We manage cardiac arrest different than any other service in the state with the way that we approach that. We use what's called a pit crew concept. Who's a NASCAR fan? Okay, you know how the pit crew comes in and they swarm in to the car and everybody has an assigned task that they perform so they can get things done extremely quickly and efficiently, right? We do that, apply that same principle to how we manage CPR. Our STEMI Alert program, that program trained paramedics to actually diagnose and determine whether or not the patient was having a heart attack, an ST elevation MI, myocardial infarction. And we do that from the field. Now, what's the importance of that? Why is it important to do that at the bedside or at the patient side?
Treatment plan.
Quicker treatment.
Yes, sir.
It improves the treatment. It decreases the time that it takes to get the patient to the interventional catheterization procedure. And we did this by partnering with a cardiologist group out of Houston Northwest. Every one of our paramedics is trained in the cath lab. They go and do a shift in the cath lab right alongside the cardiologist. So they get firsthand working knowledge of the processes that have to take place and what they need to do to prepare this patient to bypass the ER and go straight to the cath lab. We've had several saves with this process, and some of the industry partners said, well, paramedics can't do that. Paramedics cannot correctly diagnose ST elevation MI. Well, we've kind of proved them wrong. To the point that they've actually published the findings to show that we can do that and our success. So those are 2 cardiac care differences in the way that we manage cardiac issues than other services. The rescue guard, we did this here. This was one of the more recent ones that we've been able to publish the findings and the studies, results. It improves overall oxygenation by applying a device inline, kind of like a CPAP type device, what you're looking at. And then excited delirium. Who has any idea of what I mean other than the uniformed officers in the room? And hopefully every one of them would raise their hand. What excited delirium is? This is a kind of sleeping giant. Nobody really knew what it was. It's been around since the 1800s, believe it or not. It is a condition manifested through psychiatric history, medication, illicit drug abuse that causes folks to just totally go into uncontrollable rage, superhuman strength, unlimited. Often you see them running naked in public. Okay, that's a big clue. You see somebody running down 1960. and they're not wearing any clothes, that's probably somebody suffering from excited delirium. And the issue is none of the techniques that law enforcement is trained in how to deal with that typically works because they have no pain response. So it leaves the officers with a very limited set of tools to use to gain control of that situation. The taser is the number one best way to gain control of that situation. Often, the taser is the last use of force used, and so therefore when there's a poor outcome, the media reports it, police tasered man to death, blah, 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 right? And that's really not the truth. So we've developed a unique management plan for these patients because they are patients. Even though they've committed several crimes along the way, we can't prosecute them if they're dead, right? So they're patients in risk of sudden death. So we treat them just as urgently as we do the cardiac arrest patients. And we do that through a partnership with our law enforcement officers to restrain them, sedate them, give them intravenous cooling fluid and medications to stop the underlying physiological process that's killing these folks. That program has worked so well. We have a 120 patient study that's about to be published since April of 2010 when we started the program. We've got 120 patients that we've captured and have met this criteria to be included in that study. That's a lot out here. You wouldn't think that we're dealing with that. So how did special operations get started here at Cypress Creek? Y'all been here since 1970, 75? Hey, remember back then Cypress Creek was honored with a National EMS Provider of the Year award. Why? Because Cypress Creek is known across the country for providing excellent pre-hospital care. Well, we decided, or rather, I wasn't with Cypress Creek in 1970, 75, but the leadership at the time decided that we're doing pre-hospital 911 care really, really well. Let's take this and apply this to areas that we aren't doing very well in. And those are areas where the time from the ambulance arriving on scene to establishing patient contact is delayed. Delayed because law enforcement is having to deal with an unsafe situation, so EMS is staging, or at large mass gathering events where there's a delay in finding the patient, in getting to them. Football games, concerts, festivals, so forth. So the board of directors decided to start two different programs, a tactical medic team and a bike medic team, to address these two most prevalent issues and fill the need. So we have a tactical medic team, which they kind of get all of the attention because that, tactical things are really cool and it draws a lot of attention in the media and so forth. Our bike medic team, and then a couple ones that kind of are underlying response type programs. Our fire rehab program, we started working with the fire departments, being more proactive in how we support them. The same type of support we're providing law enforcement. With our tactical team, we're adopting some of those practices and applying them to the fire rehab program. Then we have a very comprehensive first responder program that includes volunteers. We have 35 to 40 volunteers who get paged out from their home. Ms. Stanzer is one of our volunteer first responders. We also have 7 different fire departments that we work with, all under the same medical control direction. So the Champions Fire Department still has the same medical director that Cypress Creek does, so they work under the same protocols. And then they first respond with the ambulance. So if you call 911 and you get a police car and a fire truck and an ambulance at your house, You're wondering, all I called was the ambulance. Well, it's because we have an agreement with the fire department that based on what type of call it is, that they're going to send a fire truck. And law enforcement will do the same. So we basically bring good medicine to bad places, right? That's the concept. This is our service area for ESD 11. It's 178,000 square miles. We serve about 500,000 people at our peak hours. We do have some folks that come in and out of the territory. And we've got all of the different ambulance stations marked there, along with the new Exxon Delta development project. Have y'all seen that? That's going to bring in a lot of folks to this community. So let's talk about the tactical medic team real quick. I'm going to throw this little important disclaimer out there, not taking a dig at Mr. Lipton, but in one of the communications I saw that went out by email, there was a little mistake. Cypress Creek EMS does not have a SWAT team. Okay? We're all clear on that. Mr. England is going to not be happy with me if I don't make everybody clear on that. What we do have is a group of highly skilled and trained individuals that support a SWAT team. Okay, so there's a difference. Our tactical team has a statewide response and jurisdiction. And remember the picture I showed you of the ESD 11 territory, 178 square miles. Typically, paramedics can't go out and work in other jurisdictions as paramedics. They can function as EMTs to provide first aid, but they can't perform ALS interventions. They can't intubate, give medications, start IVs, and so forth. Back in early 1990s, the board established this. They were very smart. They set it up with the state of Texas to allow us to respond anywhere in the state of Texas. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We actually end up in various odd locations across the state. Our team supports the FBI SWAT team out of Houston. And so when we're working with the FBI, we go anywhere in the country the FBI responds to. Now the Houston team has a specific set of primary response areas. It's Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama. Okay? So at any given time we could get a call that we need to load up and head to Alabama. We always send two tactical medics with them at minimum. So why should we have tactical medics? Why do you think they're important?
Save lives.
Save lives, right? Provide that care. But why can't the regular ambulance service do it?
Because you're backing up the police, and they might be in a firefight, and they might get hurt.
Understand the tactics law enforcement's taking so they can interact with appropriately.
Very good. I'm going to show you a little video here that kind of brings this to home, points out some of these issues that were brought up. To give you a little background, because it's going to go pretty quick. This is a SWAT team that's serving a felony warrant for arms deals. Suspect is selling automatic weapons, has a large cache of automatic weapons on location. The building is fortified, windows have bars on them, doors have bars on them, security camera systems, and so forth. Large full-time SWAT team, something similar to an HPD. Okay, the sheriff's department goes up, they initiate a warrant at night, and whenever there's burglar bars, one of the techniques used to defeat those burglar bars is an explosive charge. They set a charge that blows the lock on the burglar bars, and it allows them to access the door. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see the team is stacked up, ready to go. They make entry, and then it'll take it from there.
stand by. The charge is hung.
The team has walked into a hail of automatic gunfire, and at least one officer is down. SWAT can't return fire because the shooter's family is inside. But the priority is to evacuate the wounded. Team leader Glenn Poe has been badly hit.
Unfortunately, this is more of a regular recurring theme and incident today than it was back in the early 90s when we started the Tactical Medic program. Team leader Glenn Poe was shot 8 times with an AK-47. Anybody know what type of weapon that is? Very powerful assault rifle that typically will defeat and can defeat ballistic armor. Okay? Several rounds did defeat his armor, went into his abdomen. He caught several rounds in his hand and his arm. And he was wearing a mic for that reality show. They had a camera crew riding with him. So that's why you could hear him after he was shot. His team extricated him out. He kind of rolled out of the door, and then they grabbed him and drug him to the front of the house in the street. And if we had time to watch the entire video, it would go on for another 20 minutes in front of this house because the suspect is still armed and in the house. EMS was there, but where were they? Where were they? They were staged well away. And they're not coming up until law enforcement clears them in. Folks, you can bleed to death and die in 4 minutes. Now that 4 minutes doesn't start when the ambulance gets there. That 4 minutes starts at the time of the injury. He laid in the street for 20 minutes. This is where tactical medics really come in and are important because they have the training, they have the equipment to function in that environment and provide life-saving intervention to an officer or an innocent party hostage that's been injured right there. They don't have to be extracted and carried out. Our team, little information about the team itself, and you'll meet some of the team members downstairs after this presentation. The team is comprised of 14 experienced 911 paramedics. We just completed our promotional process, so we have 4 members that are not police officers yet, but the others are all police officers, have been for many years, all SWAT trained, certified. Our job is to provide support to the law enforcement team. So we have to have the same type of training that they do to function safely in their environment, right?
Excuse me, sir, they function as volunteers.
Function as volunteers, basically.
They are not paid anything from it.
Ma'am. So we have to have the same equipment and the same training. Otherwise, we can compromise and further cause problems for law enforcement. The goal is to support the overall outcome and completion of the mission, okay? And minimize any casualties. Everybody on the tactical team functions under what is called an expanded scope of practice. Who's heard of that? It's basically saying, the state says I'm a paramedic, but because of all the training I've had, Dr. Vartanian and Dr. Jinks, our medical directors at Cypress Creek, say that they're going to allow me to function as a PA, physician assistant. And God love the great state of Texas, because this is one of the only states that allows that. It's up to the medical director to determine at what level he or she allows you to perform. So we have a lot of extra training and classes we have to go through and demonstrate proficiencies, but all of that comes into play when we're on scenes like the one you just saw, where we have to manage patients for longer periods of time. Paramedics are typically used to running, picking patients up at the accident scene or the home, and driving 15, 20 minutes to the hospital, and we give them off to the doctor. But what happens if you can't do that? You have to be skilled and trained to manage those patients a little bit longer than normal. So, Dr. Nicholas Sin had a famous quote stating, "The fate of the injury of the wounded lies in the hand of those who apply the first bandage." That could be the officer, right? That could be a civilian, a firefighter. They don't have to have the MD behind their name or the EMS certification. If they know how to stop bleeding, they're going to drastically improve the survival rate of that casualty. We have gained some national recognition. We've made several different publications, national publications within EMS and EMS Special Operations for the work we do on the team. We support, as Larry said, local, state, and federal organizations through a written MOU, or MOA, Memorandum of Understanding, Memorandum of Agreement. We support the FBI SWAT team in Houston. Up until just last year, we were the only non-federal agency to support the FBI. It's kind of unheard of that started back in the early 90s. And it's one of those things, once it got passed, it's like, don't change it. Because then they're going to have to go through and approve it again, and somebody's probably not going to approve it. So that allows us to do a lot of work with them, get a lot of really high-speed training. The Houston Metro Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force, known as ICAC. They are the Child Predator Task Force. They go after those folks. We are actually a member of that task force, just like a law enforcement agency would be. We're the only EMS service that is a task force member of this type of task force in the country. So the Houston ICAC group gets a lot of notoriety for that across the country, because they're the only ones that has an EMS service as a member of their task force. They keep us extremely busy. That's kind of sad, but they do keep us extremely busy. Harris County Constable's Office, Precinct 4, Constable Hickman holds the commission of 2 of my team members, so we support them. The Waller County Sheriff's Office SWAT team, there's several that are on the Waller County Sheriff's Office, thanks to Sheriff Glenn Smith. Montgomery County Constables, Precinct 3, Constable Ryan Gables, who used to be at Precinct 4, he holds a couple of our commissions. And so our team members have their law enforcement commissions held by different law enforcement agencies. The benefit to that is, in a disaster or in a crisis, it doesn't totally drain all of our resources. If something happens in Waller County, like a few years ago with the wildfires, it didn't pull our entire team into Waller County. Because when the sheriff says, y'all come on, there's no saying, well, sorry, Sheriff, I have something else to do. It would take the entire team. So we divvy up our resources and spread them out over several different agencies. And if and when you see those law enforcement administrators, thank them, because that takes some guts to be able to allow us to go out and work with the FBI in different states, potentially in lethal force encounters. All right, it takes a special law enforcement administrator to allow that to happen. And then Texas DPS Region 2 SRT
Receiving emergency message.
and then several other federal agencies, Homeland Security, SRT, U.S. Marshals, and DEA. Last year, we made 96 training events, 96, in 82 operations. That is extremely busy for a part-time team that supports so many different agencies. This is a little map of, you recognize that map, that area? That's basically us, right? All of those little blue dots, blue balloons, represent some form of tactical type operation that was conducted, that we were involved in. So, my point for showing that, it's happening up here in our backyard. It's not something that's in Houston that we're separated from. This is going on in your neighborhood, okay? Some high-profile operations we made with the Bureau and our federal law enforcement partners. In 2005, we're involved in an MS-13 initiative. Took place over northeast side of town that resulted in the longest FBI SWAT shooting. 57 minutes. So what you heard on the video, 57 minutes. Fortunately, it was all suspects and bad guys that were injured. We treated 5, life-flighted 1 to Memorial Hermann, transported the rest by ground, coordinated all of that, provided care during that 57 minutes. We didn't wait until the 58th minute when they said, okay, it's clear, come in. We were there providing care. We have an agreement with both air medical providers to accompany them to the hospital, so we get on the aircraft and ride in, and we did that with one of these suspects, and we ended up saving his life. Now, the downside of that is
He's going to jail.
saved his life. He could come back and try and sue me and so forth, but we were there. We made a difference. We worked with HFD, and that was a very high-profile case. Who would think that FBI SWAT would respond to natural disasters? I can tell you when I started, I was very involved with them, and that one caught me off guard. We went to Katrina. We had a 30-day deployment. We were on the ground on day 2 in New Orleans, and we served as the only active tactical element in downtown New Orleans for the first couple days. Now, the Bureau didn't go there for that. The Bureau went there to support and protect the New Orleans Division Office for the Southern District, because they maintained and housed all of the evidence for all of the Southern District cases. And the roof was ripped off of that building. So everything was compromised, had to be secured. Think about what would have happened if that evidence could have been compromised for all of those cases in the Southern District. So they were sent to relieve the group in New Orleans that was holding security on that building. And along the way, we kind of got involved in all sorts of other stuff. I personally ended up treating the chief of police for New Orleans on day 5, I think, and had to make the determination, Could he stay and continue to work, or do we pull him and get him help? And we have to make that determination and pull him. And I can tell you, I instantly was public enemy number one to all of the New Orleans police force. They thought we were the saviors. Yay, they're here. And then I went in and took their police chief out of the game, right? Operation Delta Down, we went and supported them in Arkansas and Mississippi for an operation in Arkansas and Tennessee. My partner at the time, Bobby Sellers, who's downstairs, he and I ended up supporting well over 500 FBI operators, serving multiple warrants in the wee hour of morning in Arkansas and Tennessee. That is a challenge, to work out of state, for me to be out of state and have to work with 2 other agencies out of state, wondering, who's this guy? Why is he here telling me what to do? And then the DEA Operation Greenhouse. Who saw this on the news or remembers it? It was on the news. This was here in this area. DA served multiple warrants with Harris County Sheriff's Office, DPS, HPD, a couple of Montgomery County agencies, and busted hydro grow, marijuana grow houses that were in high-end neighborhoods, like homes here in Champion. Concealed well. Well, the problem is, when we went to the briefing and they threw the map out, I said, oh, good Lord. All of those are in our territory. Out of 60 warrants, there were 42, 48 in this territory, in the Cypress Creek EMS territory. They all had to be served at 6 a.m. The number of tactical teams that were available, I think we ended up hitting 16, 17 at one time, simultaneously, 6 a.m. What goes on at 6 a.m.?
People are in bed, obviously.
Other than coffee, children's getting up, going to school, right? So we had to deal with that. As soon as those first 16 were done, they got in the trucks and ran and hit the next one, and the next one, and it just went like that until all were served. So this operation started at 6 in the morning and it ended about noon. We were able to bring in and staff extra ambulances, provide 14 tactical medics, 7 doctors. We set up a mobile field hospital to take care of them, because the EMS service, if every truck was available, would not have been able to handle the initial set of warrants. The hospital would not have been able to handle what was going on. We can't stop 911 business from occurring. Can't tell everybody, time out. Nobody called 911. We got to deal with this operation. We'll let you know when you can call for help. So we had to maintain our service. And so by doing it through the tactical team, we were able to not have any impact on our 911 service at all. Yes?
Whenever it comes to these types of operations, how extensive are you all involved in the planning process as far as where these teams are going to be staged in relation to law enforcement?
We're extremely involved with the Bureau in ICAC, since we work with them through the MOU. Agencies that were not involved through an MOU, maybe they haven't worked with us, that tactical commander hasn't worked with us, he's not familiar with it. We will attempt to provide as much medical intelligence as we can, but the law enforcement agency handles the tactical side of that operation. I'm not telling him where to put his vehicles and put his officers. All I'm saying is there's kids out this time of the morning. The information you've given me says that there's children in the home or elderly folks in the home that you need to be aware of and we need to plan for, or that there's 12 people living in this house, so we need to be mindful of that. And I'm going to have 2 medics with you that go in the house, and I'll have a an ambulance stage down the street with additional medics, and we'll have pre-staged where the helicopter is going to land. If I call for it, we know exactly what hospital we're going to. Everything's predetermined. So all we got to do is push the button, right? This was the hydro operation. The majority of those are in our territory, right? Our bike medic team.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Can you back up to your map and point out 1960?
So 1960.
So those white pinheads were places that were busted.
Correct.
Thank you.
The majority of which were on which side of 1960?
No.
North side, right? Our biomedic response team is combined staff of 42 volunteer and career members of EMTs and paramedics. We follow the International Standard for Public Safety Cyclist Training established by IPMBA, the International Police Mountain Bike Association, which I serve on their board of directors. Everybody has to go through a 40-hour EMS cyclist course, maintain their training, demonstrate proficiency in slow speed skills and vehicular riding. That means, can they ride on the streets both day and night, obey traffic laws and so forth. We drastically improved our response times to large events, mass gathering events, such as the Crawfish Festival. Who's not been to the Crawfish Festival? That's probably an easier question to ask. And then we participate in and help develop the bicycle response team training. This is a specific course that was developed for law enforcement riot teams to work off of bikes, to be able to move agilely through the crowds and deal with large demonstrations such as the RNC, Republican National Convention. Okay, that's the type of demonstration. World Health Organization, these types of demonstrations. And I said, we need to add and apply our concept that we did with tactical medics to this. We need to train medics, take bike medics, and train them in these tactics, and assign them to your team so they can ride out with you. If you get injured, they're there to treat you. Remember, it's all about treating at the point of wounding. That's where that officer is injured, not extracting them out and driving them to the hospital, okay? So we utilized that in the 1960 parade. Have y'all seen the bikes? All of those bikes, and that's a pretty awesome picture. We filled about 48 to 50 bike medics and bike officers to ride the 1960 parade. They utilize all those skills. They manage about 120 to 150,000 spectators along the route. And they do that with their bikes and the skills that they're taught. We work and provide medical support to all of the Ironman Texas events. The Ironman 70.3 in Galveston and the big qualifying Kona race, the Ironman Texas in the Woodlands. That race alone, we transport 90 to 100 patients at that one race in the Woodlands, along the waterway. How do you move 100 patients out of the waterway in 4 hours? Well, you can't do it with ambulances. We do it with bikes, and we do it with specialized response vehicles like the one pictured there. That's downstairs for you to look at. It carries everything that we have on the ambulance carried on that truck. Now, not in the quantities, obviously, but we have all the critical medical equipment. In 2013, we made 21 training events, 41 operations, and we managed and dealt with 148 patients. The bikes, 148 patients. That's amazing. Now what does that do for Crawfish, for the parade? That's calls that ambulances do not have to make because bikes are dealing with that. Only if they're transported are they required. We have an education program. We partnered with Houston Northwest back in 2008 to start a child bike safety program. We partnered with them. They provided the funding to purchase that nice trailer and all the equipment necessary to train children. We went out and in the spring ISD, the first year, we trained 3,000 children and gave out 85 helmets to families who could not provide helmets for their children. We do this through an interactive learning process, right? You have to keep that 8-year-old's attention. Kind of like I'm having to keep your attention this morning, right? And we do that with an intricate set of props that are made, that team members made to try and train children in what to look for and how to react. We teach them how to fall. Because I can tell you, it's not if you're going to fall, it's when you're going to fall and who it's going to be in front of, right? Our fire rehab program, we partnered with the local fire departments to dispatch ambulances automatically. Now, we've been doing this for a long time, but they had to ask us to come. Now we're proactive. If there's a confirmed house fire, structure fire, we automatically send an ambulance. So that ambulance crew is there, ready, waiting to receive any victims that are pulled from the fire, or deal with any firefighters that are injured. 2013, we made 339 rehab incidents. 339. And I can tell you that per month, the unit hour utilization, which means the amount of time that that ambulance was out of service dealing with this incident, ran about 16 to 17 hours that they were involved in these responses. We treated 14 patients. 14 patients. We were there, ready, when it happened. They didn't have to call us. We added a special protocol of medication called hydroxycobalamin, trade name Cyanokit. It is a life-saving drug for anybody who is exposed to smoke in a confined area and suspect to cyanide poisoning. In this district, the Champions Fire Department pulled a lady from the burning home. She was unconscious, unresponsive. We administered this medication. She walked out of the hospital. Okay?
You are fantastic. I'm delighted to have learned what I did.
Thank you. So, that made a difference. Firefighters have been saved because of this medication. It is extremely expensive. It runs about $1,200. $1,200. You have to have 2. Each patient gets 2 doses. So instantly you're $2,400. Now we have to have those. We have to have those on every ambulance. We have to have them on every supervisor vehicle. So we're looking at 17 times 2,400 just to keep them on the street. It's extremely expensive. Our first responder program, volunteers primarily that respond from home, they're issued all of this equipment, AEDs, oxygen, medical supplies and equipment to assess and treat patients prior to the ambulance arrival. The fire departments do the same thing. I am the coordinator for the first responder program. Law enforcement is involved with us, working with Precinct 4 to get their program going back in operation. And I've had discussions about getting the sheriff's office out here in District 1 back in the program.
Let's have some more discussion.
So, public access defibrillator program. We have about 50 AEDs. 25, 27 of those are deployed out in the public at businesses throughout the community. If you have a business that you see a large volume of the public come through your establishment and you would like to have an AED there, call Cypress Creek and we'll help you work through that process. Churches, schools, golf courses, gyms, you name it. We've got AEDs everywhere. This is a map location of the district and where we have AEDs currently placed. We actually have one at the funeral museum down off of Ella. Would you have thought that? No, but they run a very large school and they have a high volume of people that actually make calls there. Okay, so we're recovering the data off of the AED. We're working with the staff to show them what they did and how they can improve in the CPR process. We offer them the CPR training. We make sure the device is accessible to the public, not locked up in a closet or under somebody's desk. Our emergency management program, we participate in Emergency Medical Task Force number 6. It is a statewide deployable program. Primarily, we deploy to hurricanes. That's the big thing around here. But remember Ike? What hurt us up here? Being out of utilities for 2-3 weeks, right? So we have to manage that, and we have to staff our emergency operations center and run operations totally different during those 2 weeks. Disaster response team, they deployed to New Orleans. And actually they were using ambulances as ER rooms. The trauma rooms that you would see in an ER, we used one ambulance as a trauma room, another one right next to it. And that's how we worked that, dealing with all the evacuees that came off of the aircraft. Responding to several different events deployable by the state, some not for disasters. We deployed to San Angelo to relocate 110 children from when the state went in and took them from the accused cult that they ended up giving all the kids back to once they could go in and complete their investigation. But we had to go take all of these kids who had been taken from their parents and transport them to CPS homes all over the state of Texas. Not a fun job. I like to throw this in there because sometimes when you deploy down to hurricanes, you end up in weird places and your GPS doesn't work and you get turned around. Well, we had a strike team of 5 ambulances and a supervisor that almost found themselves in Mexico. And she called me and took that photo. She's like, should we turn around? Yes. Training programs, all of the teams within the division have a training component. The tactical medic team does a training program twice a year. We train medics from all over the world comes to this class. We have 40 medics from Canada, Bahamas, all across the country, the U.S. coming to this class at the end of the month. We've added some very important folks to our cadre that wrote the program for the military. These doctors were there. Who saw Black Hawk Down? You know the medic that's in that Black Hawk Down movie? Well, in real life, he is Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Robert Mabry. He was that 18 Delta Task Force Ranger medic at Black Hawk Down. They wrote the program, wrote the studies, and they're here working with us to teach other medics how to become tactical medics. Our cyclist training course, kind of touched on that already. And Excited Delirium, we go all over the country sharing that program and protocol with other agencies. And we've managed to gain about 12 EMS agencies in the region to get them on board and utilize that same protocol. And the program is so well known and it has impacts across the country. In Indiana, we have saved 14 lives, one of which was an 8-year-old child who had her arm ripped off in a car accident. The Evansville Police Department took our training back home. They trained their officers. They got tourniquets issued every officer for at the tune of about $30. And they applied them when they saw life-threatening hemorrhage. 14 lives, civilian lives, saved because of that program. It had such a huge impact, the state asked us to help rewrite and amend state law to allow them to do that. So I went up and testified before the House of Representatives. We amended the law, it passed. So now those state reps are coming here to this class to see how it all got started, see it firsthand. So Cypress Creek EMS is actually saving lives in Indiana. That's pretty huge, in my opinion. Active shooters, active killing incidents, that's a big thing right now. We are training law enforcement in how to stop life-threatening hemorrhage with the use of tourniquets. We just trained half of the Klein ISD Police Department. We'll train the other half in June. We're training all of the U of H law enforcement cadets, which will total almost 400 by the end of the year. And we've trained several other agencies. We're also training the fire departments. We have one scheduled here for Champion. Did you feel like you drank from a fire hydrant? It's kind of like what it is. Larry said, you got about an hour. I'm like, you want me to talk about all of this stuff in an hour? It's kind of hard. Thank you for your time. Please, let's go downstairs and look at some of the equipment. I do want to note, the equipment you're about to see, and a lot of the stuff I talked about, not a penny of tax dollars funds this program. So where does the money come from? It grows from the trees. It comes from Cypress Creek EMS. The way they're set up, there's a Cypress Creek EMS board, and there's an ESD. And they have separate bank accounts, right? This comes from Cypress Creek. It's not funded by tax dollars. So when you see some of this equipment, one should be clear, it's not your tax dollars. We get it donated. There's a $60,000 robot down there that's been donated to us because that company recognizes the greatness that we're accomplishing, and they want their product used by us to do just that. So I have the team down there. They'll answer any questions, demonstrate, show you the equipment. Please get up in and look in the ambulance. It is unmarked for a reason. We don't want to be in South Texas with an ambulance that says Cypress Creek EMS on it, right? So we have some operational security to protect the medics that work on the marked trucks. It is not a regular ambulance. There's a lot of extra stuff in there that you will not see in a regular ambulance. Please go down and take a look at it. Because if things change on May 10th, that can affect what we're able to do here. Remember, I said this is funded by Cypress Creek EMS. So if they have to start using that money to fund normal operations, because funding sources change from the ESD, then this gets cut. These programs will get cut. Thank you.